Hello, everyone. My name is Brandon Jewell with the CTE Foundation. I'm here with Dan Voigt, the CEO of Blentech today. Dan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So Dan, as we get into these questions, first maybe you can start out by just talking about what Blentech does.
Sure, be happy to. Well, Blentech's been in the Sonoma area for more than 30 years. We design, engineer, manufacture, and automate industrial food processing equipment. So it's really big stuff for large-scale food production, and we ship that equipment, those systems, all around the world.
Can you name drop some companies we might know that use that equipment?
Well, I need to be careful about that, but what
Okay.
I can guarantee you is if you're buying food at many fast food restaurants or casual dining chains, you're eating food off a Blentech machine. We took a stab at trying to calculate what percentage of meals actually go through a Blentech machine. You can see it on our website, but it's small, not a small percentage. We have thousands of machines in operation producing food all around the world. So, and some of those names in terms of testimonials are on our website, so you can check those out as well.
Okay. Now, as the CEO, what does a typical day look like for you?
Well, I think as a CEO, I'm not sure there is such a thing as a typical day.
Okay.
So a typical day is atypical. We'll start with that. But for me, it's about coordinating the team and making sure that the organization stays on track with its purpose, focusing on the vision of what the company needs to accomplish for its customers and for its shareholders and for its employees. But if you distill that down away from the corporate rhetoric, it's quite technical at times, and so it can range from working with the team to actually develop or improve designs to supporting the integration of activities within the departments, developing procedures, policies, or developing capabilities for the company or marketing activities. It really does range quite broadly, but it does get quite technical from time to time.
Well, that actually brings me to my next question pretty perfectly, because I'm curious, are you an engineer by trade, or were you in food science? I'm wondering how you got into this.
Yeah, my path is probably an unusual one. I did study food science when I was first in college, and then I went back and got a master's degree in the food engineering department at UC Davis. And in my graduate work, I was fortunate enough to land on my graduate work was landed on a NASA grant to develop food processing equipment for a manned mission to Mars. And obviously we haven't done that yet, but developing those theories nonetheless is helpful towards paving the way for that type of things. I should say that going back, my grandfather was a food technologist, and I grew up around him, so he built frozen vegetable factories and canned food factories in Central and South America, and growing up I spent a great deal of time with him. And he inspired some of those decisions I made later in life. I might be one of those rare people who knew that they wanted to do this as a career probably before they got to high school.
That is rare, by the way.
Very rare.
It's very rare. In fact, a lot of the students watching this are in that situation where they're trying to figure out, they're trying to get what you had and figure out what kind of path they want to take.
Well, it's funny because like my dad gave me something the other day and I had it in my bag, and when you mentioned we were going to be talking, I thought, oh, I'm going to bring this out and put this on the table. So this was my grandfather's passport.
Oh wow!
And so what it was like to talk with him is he had stories about all these different places and all these different countries, and the thing about food is everybody eats. Doesn't matter who's in the office, of the presidency. It doesn't matter what's going on around the world. It's one of the basic fundamental human needs, and so it's a skill. It's a trade that's needed everywhere, just fundamentally. So to be able to support that is really adding to humanity at the foundational level, and it allows you to add value anywhere.
Do you feel like that's why you went into that? Is you wanted to have an impact on something as important as feeding the world?
Well, I don't know that I was altruistically inspired when I was in my teens and things like that. I would say I thought that it would be an opportunity to see the world, and to be able to go to the places I wanted to go to, and it certainly afforded that opportunity. I think later in life, as I began to understand, my place in the world, and people and connectivity, I'm a little more inspired by that. I
Mhm.
always liked to cook. I always really loved. I had early cookbooks, and in some presentations I've given before, I've actually got a photograph of me in a cookbook when I was 2.5 years old, and it was fun. It was a cooking with kids book, but I was always really interested, not so much in the ingredients, but the steps to make it. So
Hmm.
I like the process of making food. I like, an excellent Saturday for me is to spend a whole chunk of time in the kitchen cooking something, and then the little more complex, the better.
Hmm. Were you able to travel a lot like you wanted to?
Yeah, possibly
Yep.
more than I wanted
Oh,
to.
wow.
But when I started out my job, which I did, I've worked in a number of jobs in the industry, but when I started out my career with Blentech, I was assigned a role called Equipment Application Specialist. And with that role, I did demonstrations and new equipment startup around the world. So within the first year on the job, this is not necessarily usual, but within the first year on the job, I was able to actually circumnavigate the globe. I had a around the world plane ticket, and I visited numerous countries around, and it was one of those
Wow.
experiences that was just wow. I did that.
Traveling aside, because that's an obvious benefit, what
Mhm.
is it about your job at Blentech that you really enjoy?
Well, I love working with the folks in the industry. I mean, I think, if you think about, well, what we've all been through in this last year with the pandemic effects, and we can all remember the fear, or the terror in some cases that people were feeling in and around March, when the lockdowns were beginning to happen. The first thing that happened is people began to clear out the shelves and stockpile food, because it's a fundamental need. Well, the food industry, look, it didn't keep everything perfectly on the shelf, but the bottom line is, pretty much for the most part, people were fed pretty well. The food industry banded together, they helped each other out. They ensured that those basic needs were met, and being a part of that industrial community,
Mhm.
I think that's just a good thing. So that's one thing that adds value on a day-to-day basis.
So, as far as the students that are watching this who are thinking to themselves, this might be something, going into any sort of maybe automation or tech or food manufacturing, what kind of skills would you say, or even skills and interests would you say one should have in order to be in this industry?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Well, so if we take Blentech as an example of what types of skills you might want to have, that there are a range of different technical departments, and so there are opportunities for people with a very broad array of interests. We have, for example, applications engineers who help customers figure out how to adapt their recipes to industrial equipment, or come up with large scale process concepts, almost large scale industrial engineering, if you will, figuring out what types of machines you might need to have and how big those machines need to be. That's one technical skill. And sometimes it's food science, sometimes it's food engineering, sometimes it's chemical engineering. And then as the projects come in, it moves into a process and project engineering role, where folks there maybe need to have project management skill sets. They maybe need to border more on the understanding automation, how it works, but not necessarily doing the programming in that case. But maybe startup and commissioning activities where machines are being started up, because you'd follow the job out to the field and work on that, as well as interpersonal communication skills. As it moves deeper into the company, you've got mechanical engineers and designers. You've got automation engineers and designers. You've got controls technicians building the panels, and there's also software professionals working on the software that powers the equipment through the cloud. Keeping in mind that these pieces of equipment, they're often multi-million-dollar machines, and the back end technology that supports them, that powers them, is really no small feat to create. It takes months and years. But it doesn't stop there, because once we're done designing it, we're building them here in Santa Rosa. We've got experienced fabricators that are doing all sorts of different fabrication activities, from sheet metal to welding, to code welding, grinding, and all sorts of other things to make sure the finishes are proper, the construction is the way that it needs to be, or that if it's a pressure vessel, it can hold pressure, as well as machinists and assemblers. And then taking it out into the field, which is, knowing how to move heavy pieces of equipment, put it into place, get it in the right spot, make sure you can train people so they know how to maintain it, how to use it, how to clean it, because these things are going to be put there and they're expected to be there for decades. So really, yeah, the breadth of experiential exposure really depends upon what a person's interest in. A computer programmer, somebody who wants to do that programming, might have a very different focus than someone who's an applications engineer. The applications engineer maybe thrives on people interactions. Maybe they love to work in teams. When that comes up in school, they're the first to go get on a team. Maybe the folks that are a little more focused on some of the solo work, maybe programming or design is a little more for them, where they can dive into a project and really get into that state of flow around that kind of activity, and it creates fulfillment for all that whole range of people.
Are you guys hiring right now?
We are hiring some positions right now. It's been up and down, but in general, we have some opportunities. Yeah.
What about for entry-level folks who I'm thinking about the students that might be watching? Do you have any sort of positions that are really entry level that would allow them to grow in the position and learn during the position?
Yeah, there are many ways to enter into the company and grow from within a position. There's always internship opportunities, and that can occur in any of the departments. And probably just a bit of general advice for students in general. Whether or not there's an internship advertised at a company doesn't necessarily mean the company wouldn't consider you. So some of the best interns we've hired boldly walked in, handed us their resume, and said, "I love what you do. I want to be a part of it. Can I be an intern?" And we create those positions. In manufacturing, there's obviously the ways to work up from some of the more entry-level positions. Helping out fabricators or working in the grinding department is often a vector for working your way up into that. And then maybe later folks go on to take the welding programs at the JC, and can rise in positions there. But certainly the same path can be taken in CAD design, through mechanical or through electrical or even through process engineering. The same type of paths can be there. Of course, you can always go through college and get an engineering degree or one of those other degrees as well. Companies in general are very proud of what they do. They're very purpose-driven, most of them. And they can't always create these positions, but if you take the time to go to their website, read about their purpose, understand their purpose, and if you're inspired by that purpose, and you can come forward and articulate how what they do, you want to help them do what they do, because you too are inspired by that or interested in that. That's a pretty rare talent, and folks know that that's often the seeds of really great employees.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, I think that about wraps it up. I really want to thank you, Dan, for joining us today and providing some insight on what Blentech is. I'm assuming a lot of these students who are watching this probably didn't know before this, and sharing your experience. That was really great. Thank you.
Happy to do it. Yeah, happy to do it. Thanks for the time.